I bought a property in 2015, and right now it's 2025, and I had to evaluate it because Oakland's not doing well, and I'm personally scared of living here. So I want to see what options do I have, and it's valued $200,000 less than I had expected. Um, it doesn't feel safe anymore. Period. I literally watched somebody's car getting smashed into while waiting for a red light and getting her purse taken out of bag and out of the car. And then she's sitting there freaking out because her car key was in her bag. It's an electrical car. So her car cannot start. She's literally stuck in the middle of nowhere.
Peace, Oakland. We're here today to talk about the ongoing eviction moratorium, or whatever you call it. It appears that small housing providers in Oakland, California, continue to be under siege with lack of payment for rent and having to navigate ever increasing regulations and policies that make it difficult for them to recoup rent from their renters. Um, so we're going to talk about that. We have some interviews. Chris Moore, we have interviews with the small housing provider in West Oakland to hear how she lost over $200,000 worth of value in her home in just a few short years due to Oakland's crime epidemic and living issues. So without further ado, let me bring up Chris Moore. You guys all know him, Mr. Chris Moore himself. What's up, Mr. Moore? How's it going, man?
It's going well. Long
Been,
time no talk.
I know. I hope you've been having a good summer, taking some time off of politics.
I
Um,
I've been busy doing politics, special projects, mostly at the county, but otherwise, yeah, taking off from the political side.
oh, that's right. There's a little recall happening up in
Oh,
somewhere.
that too.
Fairfax, is it?
Fairfax is up in the town of Fairfax. They have the mayor, vice mayor. They got corrupted by no other than some soggies here in Oakland and Berkeley, and trying to
Well,
push.
there's a major SCIU headquarters in Fairfax. I don't know if you know that.
Really, it's a tiny little town. It's a,
Oh yeah, that's our Northern California office for 1021 was there.
interesting. So yeah, so they're pushing policies. They're growing their homeless population. Very little town, and they so the town's taking back their city, and they got it on the. It's going to be on the ballot probably in November, and they're likely to recall.
Oh, good job.
Yeah, it's good. I just kind of gave a little bit of advice. They really did it in the town there. They organized and made it happen, and I just kind of helped them through the process. So, but it's good. It's good. It will force those two out and get some people in there with common sense that aren't trying to squander the money on, the streets are all beaten up, but they're spending $30,000 on a walkway. Right? I'm sorry, a painted walk, a painted walkway path. Just kind of nutty stuff like that that they're doing for the feel good of the community or feel good of those politicians. So
Well, Chris, it's the same everywhere you look that these progressives run the city. And it's clear that they're a criminal gang. There needs to be some kind of RICO investigations into all the webs of nonprofits and media ecosystems and how they control all the levers and most of the courts. And
yep.
we're not careful. And 12 out of 10 people in America live here. So we are by far the most important place, seventh largest economy in the entire world. California is America. And
Yep.
I think that people need to not leave. We need to stay and fight for it and make sure that we can have some reform because these people who run the show here are absolute criminals. Which brings me to one of the most, I would say, excuse me, flagrant abuses of the U.S. Constitution I've ever witnessed in my life, which was the eviction moratoriums which is the violation of the Fourth Amendment. If you don't know, maybe I just need to just educate people.
Go for it.
Once more, I'm going to go ahead and bring up an image of the Fourth Amendment because, I think that sometimes people need visual reminders. Okay. The Fourth Amendment is the protection of personal property against search and seizure from the U.S. government. And it protects us from unreasonable government intrusion into our private domains, which means private space and private objects. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable search and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall be issued, but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmations, and in particular, describing a place to be searched and a person or things to be seized. And so, when your property is taken from you and you can't get it back, and your contract is being violated and the government is the one in the way, you have a clear Fourth Amendment violation. Now, question time. Are you familiar with the national legal landscape and eviction moratoriums, and have any cases of significance been won since COVID in other places outside of California that give a precedent to this Fourth Amendment violation and getting money back to property owners?
Not up at the Supreme Court level. I don't think anything, unless you're aware of it, I don't think anything has made it up to that level, there to the Supreme Court level, the federal Supreme Court. So I think, there's a couple cases that are working, that are here in Alameda County. They're still at the district court level. They're going to be, that decision's coming up soon, maybe possibly in August, but it'll be soon. And then, of course, either party. So that is housing providers, two separate groups of housing providers that are against. In both cases against Alameda County, and then in one of those lawsuits, it's Alameda County and the city of Oakland. And so as those come up and those work their way through the courts over the next probably 3 years, then we'll get a decision of what.
How many years? What?
Well, it takes to first. I mean, it's been at the district court for. There was a decision made, an initial decision made probably a year ago, but it's going to be finalized maybe in the next few weeks, in August or September, but not too far off. But then it will be appealed, and you got to get scheduled on the appellate court, and that could take a year. And then depending on what happens there, both parties will likely appeal, whoever loses, up to, and see if the Supreme Court will take it. And that'll probably take, another year or so after that. So
the wheels of justice move slow, but in the meantime, you could very well lose your property. So it doesn't look like there's any sense of urgency with this current government. All right. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say just that it's interesting because, and we may talk about it today, but what's going on at the county with these Measure W funds, but the county attorney, she mentioned that this could be, if they lose it, there's no insurance to cover it. They lose this case at the county, it could be $500 to $700 million hit to the county.
That's the number that she gave?
Yep.
Very interesting, because I gave a similar number in an interview with the housing provider, that the county owed upwards of $500 million countywide to housing providers. To hear $700 million quoted from the actual county attorney themselves is a little bit shocking. That's a lot more money than I had heard prior. I had heard $1 billion, but I thought that the ERAP money had been making up for it. So I want to talk about the 2 years ago. And I just want to have a blast on the past. Hold on one second. I'm clearing up my screen here. Because you were there. This is kind of where we met. And
Was that 2 years? I think it was 3 years ago, wasn't it? I guess maybe it was 2
three?
years
No,
ago.
it's 2020, 2025
Wow.
now, right? So
2020.
that was
Yeah.
2023. Oakland had the longest eviction moratorium in the country. And remember how politically charged it was. And even in the headlines. So remember, Oakland had the longest eviction moratorium in the country. But look at this headline from San Francisco Chronicle reporter Sarah Ravini. It was pretty soggy. Oakland to end COVID eviction moratorium amid pressure from landlords. Does that mean that they had no intention on ever ending it? It's the longest in the country. It is the longest in the country. What are your thoughts on that quickly?
Well, I think, yeah, I actually think they, they wanted to keep it going forever. You had a very soggy Oakland City Council, and Berkeley for that matter. And you had these soggy social democrats, from ACE and these other corrupt, grifting organizations that were pushing that, their theory is, hey, let's make all housing government run and government owned, and which is absurd. And so that they thought this is the way to do it. Let's bankrupt all housing providers, in particular the Black and immigrant housing providers. Primarily, that's who they were trying to bankrupt and take that housing from them, or that, what the housing they were providing. And that's what was going on.
Oh crap! I think it's this paywall. You know what? Let me stop sharing it. We can talk about it here. We got people, and I can put some B-roll up. But you guys remember, we filled the council chambers with hundreds of housing providers and outnumbered the activists, and got a 7-1 vote. But that also included more money for Dearasa and tenant protections, if you recall, right?
Well, they built
And
up their attorney staffs, and so they took the more money that came in there for that program, they took generally a 10% cut. So it was a huge windfall for these organizations.
Oh yes, let me go bring it up real quick, and I'll show you.
Yeah,
We'll show you this windfall, what we mean. And I talked about this earlier in my opening remarks, and I probably ought to show some B-roll. But if you're still sticking around, thank you for watching Gotham Oakland. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Okay, here is Centro Ligo de la Raza Incorporated in Oakland, California. Now, notice, and this is a common theme. Doesn't it feel like every time we look at someone's nonprofit, from Carol Five to any of the nonprofits in the progressive ecosystem or cabal, they all have a huge spike of money in 2020 during COVID.
107 million.
The year before, 2021, in 2021, and this is right before the eviction moratorium. This is right during the fight when Oakland was, the heart of it, when most people were ending it.
Right.
Now, a lot of this was ERAP money distribution, correct? Weren't they in charge of distributing the ERAP money?
And I think Dearasa, basically, they took in those funds and then they would distribute it to 4 or 5 other grifter organizations that, out in the community. So they're all kind of, of course, in cahoots together to take these funds and spend them on their own attorneys versus getting the funds out to the tenants who were trying to, stay in their homes, and were told, and there were billboards that the state put up, don't pay your rent.
Oh, I remember.
Don't pay your rent. We'll pay it. But the problem was, in particular, Oakland. So at the county level, the county did fund if you didn't pay your rent, and they did have means testing. So if you didn't pay your rent and you earned up to 50% of AMI, which is roughly at the time $60,000, then you could get that rent paid for by the state funds, either directly from the state or through.
So the county had a threshold for repayment, but there was no disclosure threshold for withholding of rent. You could just do it whenever
Correct.
you felt
They
like
just
it.
said, "Hey, don't pay your rent." And Oakland promoted it even more. They said, "Do not pay your rent." Now, Oakland's threshold that they could cover was $36,000. So if you could, which is 30% of AMI, average median Bay Area income. So they only gave funds if your tenants earn $36,000 or less, and so you could earn $1 million, not pay your rent, and the city would never, of course, they didn't have money to give to you, but they still told you, hey, don't pay your rent, in an effort to destroy particularly housing in East Oakland and from the mom and pop housing providers. It's philosophy.
So
This was their opportunity to take over and cause foreclosures, and take over the housing. That was, their of course nutty, crazy idea.
So we're gonna watch an interview together and react to it together that I did with the housing provider. I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna pull that up in a second, but before that, I want to talk about Measure W. But before that, let's talk about this.
Right.
Now,
This
I understand that this failed.
it's
So let's
in the
just
process of failing, but yeah, it's basically dead. Not officially, but almost dead.
okay. Well, let's just talk about it for a second.
Yeah.
It says California SB 436 will allow renters to escape eviction by paying delinquent rent at any point during the UD unlawful detainer process.
Right.
This legislation would make the 3-day notice to pay worthless if the renter or some assistance group, this is obviously someone's take on it, not the legal thing itself. But it basically says that if this law was to have passed, the delinquent renter could pay at any time, and the owner would still be on the hook for significant attorney fees in order to get the unlawful detainer. Um, and
Yep.
they could immediately go back to doing that cycle again and again and again.
Yep. Exactly.
What does this kind of stuff happen often? Do you often see these types of laws being floated? And can you talk about how that feels as a board member of East Bay Rental Housing Association, as a small housing provider, and what you're hearing from people who your organization services and represents?
So, I mean, there's probably 60 laws floated every year up at the state level, right? Easily 60. And this particular one's by Wahab down in Hayward and or in that part of the state. And they are constantly floating these laws to help housing and help protect housing. And just like everything else the state does, or 90% of what they do over there, it has the exact opposite effect. They are actually destroying housing and destroying, the ability for housing providers, the people that know how to provide housing, to provide housing. And in this case, I mean, it's 436 was, there were two, and the reason it did die, fortunately, there was some likely, people understood and listened to the housing providers say, okay, this would be dumb, right, and hurt renters. So number one, the first piece was extending what's called the pay or quit notice from the 3-day notice to a 14-day notice. And while it sounds, hey, yeah, let's give the renter a little more time before a housing provider can put out a notice saying, hey, you're later in your rent, right? So right now it's 3 days. State law is 3 days. And they wanted to extend it to 14 days. So what does that do? Let's say take if you have a credit card debt and you have a bill that's due on, you always get a bill from your credit card company on the 5th of the month. But then this month you don't pay it for whatever reason, and your credit card company's not telling you. They're
Hmm.
taking, 14 more days, and then they send you a note. Well, what happens in that 14 days? Typically, and a lot of times, those most in need, those who are living day to day by, on funds, they're
Paycheck to paycheck.
yeah, they're not paycheck to paycheck. They're not good with managing funds, and there's many people out there like that in their budget. They spend that money, and so this is the case. So if I as a housing provider don't give them a notice after 3 days saying, "Hey, your rent's due," they're thinking, well, maybe I don't have to pay it this month, or maybe I can wait. And then when they get this paycheck to pay, they're living paycheck to paycheck, they spend that money. What happens after 14 days? Now they're in even more trouble, and
It's
now
self.
they
It's
owe
self.
even more money.
It's
So, and it actually causes them to become in more, it hurts their housing even more because they have a harder time paying that rent. If they don't have that funds, or they have needs, then they're going to be in more trouble, and they're probably going to
mhm.
ultimately lose that housing. So that was the first piece of the bill. The second piece was that, so an eviction process in Alameda County, it takes minimum 6 months.
Wow, 6 months from the
That,
3 day notice to
yes,
actually having the
yes.
eminent domain or whatever they call it. So it takes 6 months
That-
to be able to get that person out the house completely.
Uh, it could take 6 months just to get through the courts, and then you have to, if the renter didn't move out, then you have to hire the sheriff. The sheriff can take anywhere from 30 to 90 days to get out there to basically say, hey, you have to leave. Okay. So let's just say it takes 6 to 9 months to take it through that process. So if you implemented this bill and they could pay, what this bill was saying is, if the sheriff shows up at your door, let's just say 6 months later, you could have the money and pay it. So what does that mean? That means that the housing provider, the owner of the property, basically is, number one, out the rent for that 6 months. They have to find another way to pay their property tax, pay their mortgage, pay whatever. They also, it may have cost them 20 to $30,000 in legal fees. In Oakland and many parts of Alameda County, the the renter gets free attorney help because it's paid for by the county. And a lot of these, it's like Dearasa and these others, he's paid uh, ELBC. So some of the other lawyers that are for the tenants and renters, their objective is bankrupt these housing providers, because they're friends with other grifter not-for-profits to come in and try to buy these houses, right, and buy the rental location. So that is they try to drive up those attorneys fees. So here you have a housing provider, and think about this: somebody that's providing low-cost housing, affordable housing. They haven't collected rent for 6 months. They're having to hire attorneys, pay $20,000, which is probably the annual rent. And then at the last minute, the renter gets money, whether it's from an organization in the county or another organization. Somehow they get that money, which should have been there right up front for them, really, if you think about it. Should have been there up front, but they
Well,
drag that
not
on.
not if the goal is to extract the
Yes.
money from
And,
you.
and
Sounds like legal extortion to me in a
Oh,
way.
yeah, absolutely it is. And unfortunately, both the county and the city of Oakland and Berkeley, they're listening to nutcases like Leah Simon Weisberg and others with ACE, or with their, they have a new movement organization now, and their policies, they've never provided a single unit of housing themselves, and so they don't really understand how it works. And
Well, of
so
course not.
so yeah. And
Provide housing? What?
yeah,
Come
so
on
it's
now.
So any case, that is why that was shut down, because that would have bankrupted, pretty much, and taken housing off the market for significant numbers of affordable housing providers in Oakland, and in pretty much every major city in California.
So let's talk about Measure Q real quick while this
Or
video
W,
is
Measure W,
loading.
Measure W.
Measure W. So there's $800 million in Measure W funds that the county is sitting on.
Right.
And EBRA turned out speakers last week to compel the county to withhold some of that money to make housing providers whole and continue the ERAP program. Is that what it was?
Yeah, there's three parts that EBRA recommended. So there's 800 million. It's going to be 1.8 billion by the time it's ending in 2030. But so we talked earlier, there's this 500 to 700 million that's likely owed to housing providers because of the taking during the eviction moratorium. So we said, why don't you take 100 million and put that as a down payment towards that, because you're continuing to lose housing in the community by particularly small housing providers who don't have the capital to survive and who are still, in some cases, not getting paid today because
even after the eviction moratorium ended 4 years ago.
If you
in
can
July.
imagine, going on 5 years now, I can tell you, I guarantee you, I know of instances where people have not been paid for 5 years, because what happened was during the eviction moratorium, and we talk about this a little bit, imagine if you don't have to pay your rent for 2.5, 3 years. You have all this money in your pocket now. And
what if
what
you spent it?
Well, they went out and they bought a car and they took a new car loan, or and so now they have this car loan that they're having to pay every month. They can't afford the rent. And so they bought BMWs and Mercedes and nice cars, and took on additional expenses. So they can't afford rent, and now they just don't pay rent, because guess what? You have free attorneys and you have an Alameda County court system that facilitates you, to drag this along, and they teach you how to drag this out for longer and longer. Ultimately, they will have to negotiate. They won't get evicted. They will negotiate to leave, right? They'll take a payment, and the housing provider will have to forgive all that rent that was due. They'll have to, make a payment that says here, and please leave, right? And so they'll agree to what's called a stipulation agreement. That's kind of what happened. So what we're saying is, and the county knows that so there's a couple of things that need to go on here. One is, hey, make that 100 million down payment, because you're gonna.
Where does the down payment go? Does it go to an organization like they send money to Dearasa for ERAP? Does it go to, say, EBRA for withholding?
Yeah. So EBRA, East Bay Rental Housing Association, does have we are working with the county now. And typically, yes, that's, in fact, Nate Miley said, hey, we don't have any not-for-profits to distribute these kind of funds. And the county staff did say, hey, we do with East Bay Rental Housing Association. So
I bet that caused a lot of pleasure and joy amongst the housing advocates.
all
they love that.
Corrupt grifting organizations, they want that money to come through them, so they could take their cut and not give it out to the community. But in any case, that was one piece.
Oh, my bad. Sorry about that.
A second piece is, what we recommend is, 50 million to be set aside and actually be annually go to help housing providers for habitability claims that are out there, or just fixing up the properties. Because one thing that rent control does, and also eviction moratorium, it does not leave funds for the housing provider to continually maintain their properties, right? And so
Okay,
that's
okay.
why.
So I think we need to stop real quick, just because people out there listening who are not housing providers or landlords are probably like, okay, these guys have not made the case yet that these people are on the good side. So explain to people
Mhm.
why small housing providers are important to the rental market and a better option for the working class than corporate landlords or you know things of that nature.
So here's
Make the case that there is a value and that all small housing providers, let's say that I don't believe this personally, but for the sake of debate, I'm taking the side that if you can't afford the industry and you can't afford the upkeep, you don't deserve to make money off the commodification of housing, and that big companies who can afford it should control all the housing. Which no one will ever say out loud, but that's what the wokes really are saying when they. But anyway, that's
right.
what I'm
So,
saying.
so you have,
You can't do it, then you should just fail. It's free market, right?
if you think about it from you have in Oakland, I think it's roughly 120,000 units of housing. And people might look downtown and they see those, those tall buildings. Those tall buildings might have 150 to 200 to 500 units per building. And how many buildings are there? It's not 110,000 units. So where does the rest of the housing come from? It comes from the smaller housing providers in the community, and probably 60% are people that have 10 or less units. In fact, most of them have maybe 2 to 3 rental units,
You're
or they're
rich. You
renting out
got
a
four
bedroom.
houses. You got three houses. You're rich.
Yeah. So now those people are renting out, and it's primarily in East and West Oakland, in the flats, and they own these. They've saved, they've worked their lives away. They don't have a corporate job, so they don't have this regular W-2 income, but they did save money, or their parents saved money, and they were able to afford to buy a rental house to help provide income for them and their family, and a retirement income for them and their family.
Mm.
And this is what's called generational wealth, and this is how many in the community, particularly in Oakland, that is how they uh, generate their retirement. And I can tell you, it is, an EBRA. 60% of our members are either largely Black, women, that elderly women that are providing this housing. So what else is it about them? They're providing housing to somebody that is maybe like them, or somebody from their community, and they're
Hmm.
working with them to, if that renter has their car breaks down and they have like a large payment this month to fix their car. Well, guess what? They're going to work with them. Typically, they're going to work with them and say, okay, let's set up a payment plan, or I'm not going to raise your rent this year. So they work on all that. And this is the largest part of the rental housing in our community. But that is typically how it makes. So they are the ones that provide the affordable housing for a community. They also are, because they're keeping rents low. They are, they're being flexible with their renters. They don't build up a lot of extra capital or cash to be able to survive non-payment for 1 or 2 months, let alone
Mm-mm.
6.
So that brings me to I have to move it along. Sorry, we can't move it here.
Yep.
We're gonna watch this video, but I mean you're being very thorough, and I like that because people do need to get the nuances of this. And Black generational wealth has been affected. I'm glad that you highlighted Black women, who right now are the most dramatic recipient of the current layoff. We've seen over 300,000 Black women, many of them breadwinners,
Hmm.
and the country have been laid off in the past
Wow.
90 days. And
Right.
so when you consider that California is 12% of America and the seventh largest economy in the world, you can extrapolate that at least 100,000, I'm sorry, not 100,000, that tens of thousands of those women are in California. And many of them, hundreds, could be in Oakland. And so they're losing income as well as not being able to draw income away from investment that they planned on. People
Yep.
are on fixed incomes who are retired, which brings us to our next video. I was going to watch it, but I'd rather do a reaction video with you. So get ready to do a reaction video. Have you ever done a reaction video? I don't know if you've watched them on the internet.
I'm not sure. We'll see.
Okay. Well, this is Zoya.
Own property.
Before we start, she is a member of EBA.
Yeah,
As you
small
guys
housing
know each
provider
other.
in West Oakland.
And so I interviewed her about just these things. 2 years later, eviction moratorium. And here's another thing we haven't talked about yet. This one centers around the lost value in her home. And at the height, her house was worth around $800,000, and now it's been appraised for around $600,000.
Mhm.
And there's a $200,000 loss in value. And she's talking about how that affects her ability to sell or relocate. I don't want to give too much away, but let's watch it and react to it.
I've lived in Oakland for about 10 years. I have owned properties in Oakland for about 10 years. I own 2 properties in Oakland. So I grew up in China. My family and I immigrated to America when I was 13 years old. And when we settled in Los Angeles, and where we lived in a 1-bedroom apartment. My parents live in the bedroom, and I slept on the living room futon while I went to middle school and high school. And my parents, between them, had 4 jobs, so they can make ends meet and put me through school and put me through college, so we can pursue the American dream. And I believe that we have gotten to the point where we live comfortably and happily, and we're grateful for what America has offered to us.
Right.
My parents worked very hard. My dad was a electrical engineer in China, but when he came here, he didn't speak English, so he had to work in a warehouse, and it was very hard on him. He's a very proud man about it, He did what he could to provide for the family, and so did my mom. She's a businesswoman, and she's very entrepreneurial, and she's very hardworking. And we work hard and we work smart. Nothing wrong with hardworking. Nothing wrong with being creative, and nothing wrong with giving you 120% and achieving your goals and dreams. I don't know what I've done wrong. The 2 properties I bought, they were bank owned. I didn't kick anybody out. Apparently, I somehow kicked people out. I didn't. The 2 properties I bought were more or less abandoned. Nobody else wanted to touch it. And then, I had a full-time job. I wanted to invest in my future, so I worked hard. I saved, and I had some extra money. I thought, what I do, like you were saying, every immigrant should invest in something, and I chose real estate because I feel like it's something more hands-on.
So how many times, and you can say stop anytime you want to talk, by the way. Is this the common story for EBA members, and is this someone you would describe as a traditional, prototypical housing provider in Oakland? She owns 2 properties. She's the owner occupied.
So yeah, so she took, and in her case, they were abandoned properties, so they weren't even being really used as on the city. So for
So they weren't on the market providing housing.
Yeah, so she bought these. She took risk. She bought these, took probably a large loan, and invested money to fix them up so she could provide housing to the community. And that's what happened here. And what happened? So she did that, and then her organization, the eviction moratorium, the renters stopped paying, and it's funny because her property is right around the corner from Carol Fife's home. Where Carol Fife's
Euro, not her home, but Euro.
Yeah, well, I think the building is called Home. It's written Home, but it also does have a mural of her, like she's supposedly helping the community. The street was filled with
Oh, I
our
went. I drove around there. It was crazy. It was illegal dumping. I mean, West Oakland right now looks absolutely insane.
yeah,
It's just dumping everywhere and RVs
still
everywhere. It's
sick.
just.
Yeah.
All right,
So,
let's get. Let's.
so yeah, anyway, this is
And
a copy
something
Oh,
story. Yep. Yeah.
no, go ahead.
Where she's saved, she's worked. She didn't go on vacation. She saved her money, invested it in the community, and then the community came, particularly in Oakland, and took
And
advantage.
I added a bunch of units to the housing that weren't there before.
Yeah, and I don't know on this video. I do know Zoya here, and she had the opportunity to invest in more housing, and guess what? That money did not go into Oakland. That money is going to go into another state because Oakland does not want hardworking housing providers, small housing providers in its community. It's clear.
Not good.
So
Not okay. So Oakland loses money there again, and the doom spiral continues. So
yep.
let's hear more from her about her experiences and how she's feeling. And it's not a long interview, so we'll be out of here soon.
I want to learn, something I want to do. And if I have renters, I want to connect with them. I want to know who lives in my house, and I want to build a relationship. So I bought a property in 2015, and right now it's 2025, and I had to evaluate it because Oakland's not doing well, and I'm personally scared of living here. So I want to see what options do I have, and it's valued $200,000 less than I had expected. So it came as a shock, to be honest. That's about it, I guess.
What was the value of the home in 2023 approximately?
Probably 800,000, easy.
And now it's a place at 600,000.
Right.
Yeah. So houses that were going for 800,000. So some people would say that's good because it's affordable now.
Good question. Huh? And so, which means what? My 8 years of my 10 years of investment, blood, sweat, and tears didn't count.
That's what some people celebrate. What does it make you feel that people? Did you have anyone during the eviction moratorium that wasn't paying rent, or were you one of the lucky ones?
I was one of the lucky ones. I was definitely one of the lucky ones. I could see how things could have gone really badly. So, man, during the eviction moratorium, the house I live in, 2 units, right? I live on the bottom, and upstairs there are 4 bedrooms. 2 of the roommates left, moved out because they were starting to work remote and they could leave.
Still lost some interest there.
And then
right?
one guy just decided to cause havoc and just many friends who did not pay during the eviction moratorium. And many of them knew that all these renters, they had jobs and they were being paid fine, and they.
So
I think one thing
Zoya's a friend of mine, so I asked that tough question on purpose because I knew that it would kind of. I wanted to get at, and we're going to get to the interview, gets to this in a second, but I wanted to get at the class warfare and what's really going on here and how frustrating it is.
By the way, just to throw out there, she says her property went from 800 to 600. She has a loan on the property. It's probably $500,000 or $600,000, right? Is the she didn't have enough cash to buy it outright. She has a loan, and I think there is a piece here that I do want to mention on this is what is going to be the impact to renters based on this eviction moratorium and what they did. There's actually 2 things. One is, think about this. Her property was valued at $800,000. And it's likely property tax had it valued in that, 28% of every property tax dollars, or 28 cents, goes to the city of Oakland. If you have a devaluation of, in her case, from 200 to 600, and I can tell you a lot of the big buildings in downtown, had a 70% devalue.
We know. We've been watching that stuff.
Yeah.
Crazy amounts of value lost.
So the Oakland hasn't even seen it yet, but they are going to be in a world of hurt. So they think they have budget problems right now. This going through this whole process and implementing these laws to hurt and devalue housing. And this is something that the Social Democrats they
don't want to talk about it. They refuse to talk about it.
They're too brain dead to understand that when you devalue properties like that in your community, guess what? You get less revenue to the community, and now you can't take care of the needy, right? You can't take care of those.
Well, your credit gets downgraded too, and all the things that we've been talking about here in Gotham, Oakland,
and
the Alameda County Grand Jury, it's clearly pointing out,
right,
and giving everyone an opportunity to see the level of dysfunction in City Hall. Let's watch the.
Okay,
go ahead. We can't be here all day. We got to get through it.
Yeah, go ahead. We'll watch the rest of the video.
No, I want to hear your state's wisdom, Chris Moore. Give your closing points before we start the video.
The other thing that's going to happen here is that the city and the county, but largely the city of Oakland, has implemented, they've set a culture that says, don't pay your rent. You don't have to pay your rent. If you don't pay it, we'll give you free attorneys to help you not pay it, and also cost your housing provider thousands of dollars, tens
of thousands.
Yeah, for attorneys. So what does that mean? That means the housing providers, they have to be very careful about who they rent to. Now, there's lots of laws and discrimination laws, and they're not looking to discriminate. They are.
But we'll get into that. It's going to be tougher. Basically, people will use all available means of metrics, meaning that if your credit rating is not where it needs to be, which is the main one, right? So people who
it's credit rating and ability to pay. So when the economy comes back, and it will come back over time, then anybody who doesn't have stellar credit or a good W-2 job, they're going to have a tough time finding housing in our community.
Means that if there's no small housing providers to take that risk,
Correct.
I'm pretty much sure the big companies that are gobbling everything up are not going to take that risk.
No, they're not.
No, they never do. They're the ones you can never rent from.
These policies by this Oakland City Council caused this problem, and they're listening to these nutcases at ACE and others, or Movement Legal.
Well, no, they want to collapse the housing market and have socialized housing,
right.
And they're banking that these big companies are going to be a part of the whole grand 15-minute UBI experiment. The people facilitating this stuff, they don't know what the heck they're doing. You got to look up the ladder about who's funding it and what their motives may be. But I don't want to get too off the deep end there with the tinfoil hat. But Zoya has a few things to say. It's not a long interview.
They no longer have to commute to work. They just have to stay at home and work. But because of they understand, they found out that they don't have to pay rent. They just stopped paying. They were able to, many of them able to buy a second house with the money saved. Many of them bought cars, new vehicles, and many of them took vacations. My friends were not being nosy, but these renters, they somehow brag about it. Somehow it's
they brag about it, huh?
How does that make you feel?
Unjust, frustrated, and the renters not paying rent. It just, for me, it's like you sign a contract, you honor the contract. If you do not like the contract, we can have a discussion about it. But you just because somehow the government said you don't have to do this anymore, and you just stop. I don't know. A signature means something, a promise means something.
That's the key.
Let me share my thoughts on this. The two types of people. There are people who are working poor, whose rent is upwards of half, at least 1/3 if they, didn't embellish when they were getting the place. But to be honest, upwards of half of the income.
Yeah.
And then there are people who can easily afford the rent. I'm going to talk about the first group first, because I think that's where things get complicated. Because the second group, we don't have to talk about much. They're fucking assholes.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about the second group first then. Can we both agree that if you could afford to pay during COVID,
You should
and
pay.
you didn't pay because you just didn't feel like it, or you wanted to go back on your contract, as you just said, or buy another house or a car, or even rent out the house that you're in,
Yep.
all the horror stories of people who abuse that, they deserve to be punished. They're not good people.
Yep.
Okay. Now let's talk about the other group, the first group. Because I think this is the most important part of the conversation that no one talks about in Oakland. So let's say you're one of the working poor, and the government tells you, you don't have to pay your biggest bill. We're going to pay it for you. And you do all the stuff in good faith. You do the ERAP and everything. But the money runs out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, during that time that you were not paying rent, for the first time ever, you went from being working poor to middle class. And so the moral hazard that the government, and this is what I've always felt, is remember, I was always like, hey, we got to put the bulk of the blame on the government. Because although the second group of people who are just assholes do exist, the majority of people, let's say 70%, 2 out of 3, were working poor. And many of them abused it too, don't get me wrong. They could have afforded it, but not paying it meant that they finally were able to enjoy what we would see as the middle class lifestyle.
That's what you were saying, Chris. Like, they could have paid, but since, like, they kept delaying it, it was like I spent it on something else instead of being forced to spend it on the rent, be responsible. It's allowing them to be irresponsible, and since they don't have good financial habit, it compounds until it's just like, fuck it, I'm not paying a $60,000 or whatever thousand bill. I never had that much money in my life. You know, who's going to offer me a way out? And that's the activist or Dearasa who offers them a way out, and so they're going to take it.
Yeah, there will be a view that, oh, well, the housing provider, they are rich, you know, and they should, you know, it should come from them, right? Because there's an assumption that they're rich. And what they don't understand is most housing providers are not rich. They've saved their money, you know, they have it tied up in this house or the rental property. But the city keeps charging them more and more money for everything. You know, they take the risk that they're not going to get, you know, rent every month. They have to pay mortgage and property tax and all those things. And a lot of these people are not rich per se. They're doing this and barely getting by, but they are providing that housing.
We've had stories of people living in their cars because they couldn't afford the rent anymore. And while there are people living rent-free in their own house, and they was just sitting outside of it. Like, I mean, these are like isolated stories, and maybe a few dozen, but even one of those is a travesty of justice that policy should never allow for.
And the government, because I've talked to both groups, and the government promised to pay. And so they're like, well, the government went back on your word. You, landlord, we say housing provider, but you know, you landlord, go talk to the government and get your money. And I sort of felt that it put people against each other when everyone is sort of trying to make it in a very competitive and high cost environment that is California. So considering that the government essentially lied to people and told them that they would give the property owner money and they didn't do it. Do you know how much money is owed right now just to Alameda County alone?
I'm not sure. Tell me.
Beg your pardon?
How much is it?
It's about $250 million.
$250 million.
In Oakland. I think Alameda County may be $500 million.
$250 million.
And just Oakland property owners missing rent during the eviction moratorium.
There are very few of us, and many of the how do you call those people? Grifters? The nonprofit homeless advocates And I feel like they live in the high clouds, the moral high clouds and the moral high grounds. And they just finally descend and,
Yeah.
and just asking money to help the homeless. What's that even mean? Like, what? There's no accountability. There's no results. There's no data. You're
No.
just like, oh, here, have some money, have at it. And then what? It doesn't feel safe anymore.
$70 million. Remember that $70 million that Oakland spent on homeless with no data and we couldn't track, that was released from us to the auditors report in 2022, something like that everyone just memory hold and forgot, and we continue to spend more money on it. So
Period. Many and many of my friends, like they're about my age, I moved to Oakland because it's such a walkable city. You have so many options. You can take the bus, you can bike, you can skateboard. I don't skateboard, but there's an option. I can walk. But now, I literally watch somebody's car getting smashed into while waiting for a red light. And getting her purse taken out of the bag and out of the car. And then she's sitting there freaking out because her car key was in her bag. It's an electrical car. So her car cannot start. She's literally stuck in the middle of nowhere. Middle of West Oakland, Because of that, I stopped walking, and I started taking the bus. And there's all these seedy characters on the bus, and I no longer feel safe taking the bus. And so I drive. But when I drive, I lock my cars. I don't even keep my purse next to me. I put the purse behind me. Like, I'm just constantly living in high tension fear. I really don't understand why my family moved from China, from a communist country, but no longer, to Oakland, while we have to deal with communism again. Communism doesn't work. Socialism doesn't work. Anybody who ever open up a history book will understand that. I really don't understand why the kids in America, that's the golden solution of it all. I don't get it. I feel concerned that I cannot, sell my property. And given the present market situation, that I'm stuck in a place, where I just literally do not feel safe. Yeah, I'm home all day because I just don't feel safe leaving the house. Period. I go outside, get my groceries, I come in, I run my necessary errands, and then I'm home. Meanwhile, I still hear screaming, yelling around around my streets, and at night I hear gunshots, and I hear the people doing donuts. I get woken up in the middle of the night. I just no longer it doesn't feel like a home anymore. The homeless should be a shelter. I don't feel that way anymore. Why am I so active in Oakland politically? Because Oakland has so much potential. Well, okay, I moved to Oakland for the people. I just had an instant connection with everybody here. Everybody's so open, so kind, and so embracive. Nothing else mattered. And that's why I came, and that's why I stayed. And I'm very sad that many of my friends left because of how unsafe it has became. And I'm on the tail end of it. I really hope I don't leave. I'm still trying to fight. I'm still trying to bring Oakland back the way it was.
all right. Any closing remarks, Chris Moore, for what you just saw? I think Zoya speaks for a lot of us. Women scared to leave the house, scared to walk down the street, scared to take public transportation, loss of income, loss of opportunity, PTSD. I mean, these are all things from people who are living in West Oakland in the Flatlands. Now, you live in Piedmont. It's a pretty nice neighborhood where you live at, and good for you. I'm not saying that to disparage you, but what do you feel about, I live in West Oakland like Zoya, and I'll be honest, I feel bad for her. I was driving around her neighborhood and this shit was fucked up. And I was like, damn, my neighborhood's a lot better than this one. And I live in
Her
where the lower bottoms is.
Yeah.
Her shit fucked up over there, bro. It's bad over there.
Yes.
to be
And you,
stuck there and not be able to sell is like a trap.
and you had here's the other thing that's the problem. And I have we have another friend that, has rental properties, and okay, on their street, they finally cleaned up all the garbage and everything, right? So they're finally starting to do that in some areas.
It's
Well,
back on her
if
street. It's back.
let's say I want to, I'm looking to rent an apartment, and I go to that street and I look on Google Maps, what comes up? A total chaos. Like, I'm not even going to go there. There's no
Hell
way
no.
I'll live on that street. And so even though it may be cleaned up, it's still, people don't want to live there. And, the city complains, oh, there's units that are vacant in the city. It's because of them.
Well, the
They,
kids will move there. I would say I've seen a lot of young people moving back to Oakland. The scene is kind of happening again. They don't care about the chaos. The progressives have put memory. They got mind control over their people.
yeah,
And they don't plan on living here for very long anyway. And they're like, I can ignore that just to have proximity to the beautiful area that is the Bay Area. Most cities are functional, not looking like Oakland.
yeah,
We talk about the invisible wall of failed policy in Oakland, where when you go to Emeryville or Alameda or Berkeley or San Leandro, all of a sudden there's no graffiti
yeah.
and things look a lot better. So rent is
You
down significantly, and that's bringing people back in, right?
Yeah. Although Oakland still has 58% of the homelessness, and it's with 25% of the population of Alameda County. So in all of Alameda County, Oakland has 58% of the homeless.
Why is that? Is that because you can score the drugs here?
No, well, that's part of it. It's bad policy. It's just purely bad policy. They don't take care. They have an encampment management policy, but they don't deliver on it. And now, the Oakland's also, it's the only city where homelessness grew, I think, over the last 2 years, 9%, right? It's the only city in Alameda County. It's bad policy, ineffective leadership. And you have this problem. Actually, Ken Houston was mentioning this the other day, and it's true. When I saw it on the news a few weeks ago, Daniel Lurie is finally cracking down on RVs. It's like you can't park.
His approval rating 75%.
What's that?
His approval rating is
Oh, yes.
75%.
Yeah. Because if you're in an RV, they're going to tow you if you're illegally parked. And so where are all the RVs coming? Oakland, California. They're going over the bridge. They're getting to Oakland because they're not going to be, they're not going to manage
The
the
guy
policy.
said that in the interview. One interview I saw, he said, what are we going to do? Go to Oakland? But then he mentioned, but they're about to crack down too, because he heard about Councilmember Houston.
Well, hopefully, yeah. If Ken can push it through, then, because a lot of those are going to go to East Oakland.
He's
They're
going to
go
get
his
it. Think
district.
about it. Think
What's
about
that?
it. You think Queen Mayor Barbara Lee wants this chaos on her watch?
I don't think she does.
If she can ride Ken Houston's policy, and they could use Ken Houston, because all of a sudden people don't seem to want to demonize. He gets to do all the stuff that we were like caught the devil for, but since he's the son of Oakland, he can use his street cred to push stuff through that we couldn't get. Thank you for that. I do appreciate him doing that. And I think that Queen Mayor Barbara Lee will let him do that, because she is the queen and nobody's going to say anything. What's Carol Fife going to do? If Barbara Lee don't say nothing, then they can do their little performative wailing and stuff, but everybody's going to vote for it. She's going to walk out and not vote like she normally does. She's not going to vote no. Fife just doesn't vote on things, right? She's just like, I don't have to do my job. And so will they actually implement the policy? And if so, what does that mean? So I do think he's going to get the policy to pass. I think they're going to try to water it down with amendments.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's going to be an interesting test for Oakland's new council. And I think they're not going to want to be on the other end of this politically, especially 2, 4, and 6 who have elections that year. So Charlene and Janany.
And Kevin.
Right. And Kevin.
Yep.
And then you already have Houston. So that's 4. I can see Zach Unger going forward just out of self-preservation. And Barbara Lee, if she's forced to break a tie, If they force the queen to come off her throne and have to break a tie because these losers cannot get it together, you better bet she's going to vote. I don't
Right.
know. That's going to be interesting because she likes to keep her progressive credentials, right? And people play both sides of the fence. It's hard to make a prediction there, but I think it will pass. They will basically have some. I think they're just going to follow the laws we have in the books. We have a 72-hour RV law. They'll try to follow it, and then people just play whack-a-mole. But if yours is not operational, then they're going to try to force the city to tow it for you, which hopefully we don't do, because I can see the progressives doing that. But it's going to be interesting to see the infighting of how this plays out. And so we will be watching it right here in Gotham, Oakland. But for people out there who are housing providers, can you let them know why they should be a member of EBRA? And for people who are renters, why should we care? Because I'm a renter. There's also a study that more affluent people are renting now. And there's also an additional study, and this is interesting, and you can comment on it if you want to or not. Because so many people now cannot sell their investment properties, they'll become accidental landlords, or
That's
they're
it.
being forced. They're being
Right.
forced to rent, and
Yeah.
because a lot more people are just like, you know what, I'm just going to rent for this time being, even though they have the ability to purchase a home financially, they just don't want to deal with it. The interest rates, or they're waiting for the market to turn down more, maybe, or
So I'll tell you why join East Bay Rental Housing Association. If you're a small housing provider in Oakland, California, there are many laws, rental laws, and those laws are set up to extract money from you and to basically try to provide free house, get you to provide free housing. And so the way you protect yourself is to have the proper rental forms and notices, because there are, number one, your first lease with your tenant. Once you have a lease and you have that signed for the first time, it can never be changed again without the approval by your renter. That's a law. So you have to have that proper lease in place, because if you don't, you can be taken advantage of.
so
And
you guys
then
offer like lease help and help with like
we
making
provide
RVs.
leases, we provide lease templates that you can use, and then we also provide the forms that you are required to post every year or notify your tenants. So that's the basics. And then the other is we have weekly, and our CEO Derek Barnes provides weekly classes and courses, and it's on Zoom, or you can go in person, and you can learn about different ways of how to best run your property and how to best operate it, and how to provide good, be a good landlord, be a good housing provider in the community. And that's what it's about. And we have 1,600 housing providers, about 40,000 units across the city of Oakland, across the county, that we provide advice to. Yep, we have these.
Chris. I've got it up here. All
right, thank you.
And
we got to talk about Measure W in another call.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to withhold 20% of the 80 million. That is what? How
800,
much
yeah. Mm-hmm. The 800 mil.
So
yeah, we can talk about
160 million.
Probably, yeah.
Which leaves 100 million for right. It leaves enough money for them to follow your plan. So
they're really saving that, though, to just in case the federal government cuts off resourcing to the county. So yeah, they want
40 or so million in federal resources for homelessness right now, to the county. So if they don't follow Trump's new executive order, they can expect to lose probably every penny of that. But it looks like, besides the city of Oakland, most people are following the executive order. So I'm not sure how that's going to play out.
Yeah, it
Um,
remains to be seen.
yeah. So, well, thank you, Chris. I
right.
appreciate it. And
All right,
thank
Senator.
you, everybody, for watching. I'm going to sign out here. I don't have to click off. So you can say your goodbyes. See you next time on Wednesday. Take it easy out there. Peace.
All right. Thank you.
Yo, I swear it's only up from here. Yo, I swear it's only up from here. Yo, I swear it's only up from here. Yo, I swear it's only up from here.